I love is named Ramona. She kinda looks like Tempest Storm, and she can dance like a little Icha. She works down the Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, it pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house, Snake Farm.
Hi, Ian.
Ramona's got a keen sense of humor. She got a tattoo down her arm. It's of a python. Eating a little mouse, wearing a sailor hat that says Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, it pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house, Snake Farm. She says, well, it's got its charm. There's nothing to do in the winter now, then some kid gets fed at Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, it pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house, Snake Farm. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention something. This is a sing-along. Really? It goes Snake Farm, just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, pretty much is Snake Farm. It's the reptile house, Snake Farm. It ain't exactly kumbaya, but being a music bug, it ought to be perfect. Help me now, be on TV. It said Snake Farm, just sound nasty. Snake Farm, pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile. Snake Farm. We're Ramona Lights, all with her and a band from Wales that's called The Alarm. She said you cried when they broke up. She still plays the record at the Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house, Snake Farm. Sometimes Ramona calls me up and says, come on down here, it's getting warm. She runs everybody off. We just Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, it pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house, Snake Farm. Help me now. I said Snake Farm, just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, it pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house, Snake Farm.
Snake Farm, one of my favorite radio songs, folks. Let's see here. I lost the page. Hang on. I shut down the world. Howdy, howdy, everybody. That was Storyteller and howdy, howdy, everybody. That was Storyteller Ray Wiley Hubbard. I don't know if any of you ever heard of him before, but now you have, and his song Snake Farm. Local radio station used to play that once in a while, and apparently it got so popular they had to stop playing it for a while. But when my co-worker and I were out in the truck and they'd play it, we'd turn it up really loud and sing along. How is everybody today? Mike, I was going to tell you. Well, now you have Mike. Check him out. If you like folky kind of music, he's actually got some really good songs. Well, I mean, I think Snake Farm's a really good song, but he's got some other stuff that you can watch him play in concert. He's a hell of a songwriter, and his name's Ray Wiley Hubbard. I may play it again when some more people come in. I can't help myself. Mike, I was going to say I'm flying the Maple Leaf today in honor of you guys, and I guess just because of your troubles last week with well, it's not a shooter. I guess you'd call him a stabber. But anyway, that's for you, brother. I think Mark's going to join us today, but he may be a little bit late. He had company. Well, I was serious about that, Mike. And you're welcome. And I may have some bad news today. Hang on just a minute. Let's see. Oh, did it? Well, when you say all the soccer, what do you mean? All the European games, or even here, or I would imagine all the big British teams are down today. Or do you mean local teams? And Mike, I also didn't want you to let it be said that Americans don't support their Canadian neighbors, buddy. I think we're lucky to have you guys as neighbors. I mean, gee, it could be Russia. You know, it's interesting. Or is that just up there you're talking about? All Mike, no, Ian, never mind, not Mike. It's interesting. We kind of shut off the king and the monarchy and all that stuff, but still, when the queen dies, it's a big deal here. The Banjo Bowl, what do they know? That's not banjo country. Hi, Tedward. You just got through with your breakfast. Say hi to everybody, buddy. You're not in the camera. Come here. Let me go over here a little bit. Come on, stand up. Come on. Somehow I just think you know what I'm doing, and you don't want to be part of it. You don't stand up or not? He just came back. He heard his breakfast bell was ringing. Oh, he didn't eat, huh? You went running up there. Why didn't you eat a little bit while you were there? You have to get down here quick. No biting. Okay. No biting. Anyway, as I was saying, it's funny how much impact it has even here, though, when, of course, I don't know there's another serious world leader has lived nearly as long as she did. I mean, I guess you'd call her a world leader. I mean, prime minister really runs the country, but what kind of what's the there's my buddy Marcus. Sir Mark.
Good morning.
How are you, buddy? Hey, I got to play you a song. Hang on a minute.
You're playing a song.
Well, I was, and you didn't get here in time, so now I'm going to play it because everybody needs to hear this once in their life. Oh boy, watch out in there. You got rain today too?
Me?
Yeah.
No, we got frost.
Frost. Oh, good.
My wife is not a happy camper.
Isn't she?
Well, she has plants out that we weren't planning on having a frost.
Oh.
She's got plants outside, and so I don't think it frosted hard enough to do anything, but we'll see.
Good morning, Diana. I didn't see you pop in. Well, anyway, here's today's theme song. I'm going to play it again for everybody. Except that ain't it. Hang on.
You could jam that one too.
That's the wrong hat. Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Oh, wrong hat. Oh,
here's the jarhead.
But I might not see you Wednesday, right? You just might go get the milk and go back.
Your company's still at the house?
Yeah, they're just leaving. All right, I'm back.
All right, here it goes.
Well, woman I love is named Ramona. She kind of looks like Tempest Storm, and she can dance like a little Echa. She works down the Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm, it pretty much is Snake Farm.
She works at the snake farm.
Ramona's got a keen sense of humor. She got a tattoo down her arm. It's of a python eating a little mouse, wearing a sailor hat that says Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just says.
Let them say hi.
Pardon?
I said, let them say hi before they leave.
Well, they're out.
Oh, darn. All right.
That's a great song, Snake.
It's a great song.
Yeah, I gotta apologize. It's like a weekly apology for being late.
No, you're fine.
I was up at 5:30 this morning making sourdough biscuits for these guys. Doing the Kent Rollins thing, had to cook for the boys. It's a reptile house.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention something. This is a sing-along. Really? Here goes Snake Farm. Just sounds nasty. Snake Farm. Pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house. Snake Farm. Ain't exactly Kumbaya, but bug it up, be perfect. Help me now, be on TV. It said Snake Farm. Just sounds nasty. Snake Farm. Pretty much is Snake Farm. It's a reptile house. Snake
That guy looks like he ought to be there singing with him.
Yeah.
Get into it now. Well, Ramona likes all the liquor and a band from Wales that's called The Alarm. She said you cried when they broke up. She still plays the record at the Snake Farm. Snake Farm, it just sounds nasty. Snake Farm.
Tim's playing music.
Snake Farm, it's a reptile house. Snake Farm.
We're talking about snakes, and he's playing a Snake Farm song. And kissed her, Don.
Sometimes Ramona calls me up, says, come on down here, it's getting warm. She runs everybody off, and we, it's a snake farm. Just says that.
Well, it's a snake farm.
It's a snake farm.
It's a reptile house, snake farm. Help me now. I said snake farm, just south nasty. Snake farm, it pretty much is snake farm. It's a reptile house, snake farm.
Anyway,
That's eclectic, is it? Is that a good use? Is that a good use of that term?
yeah, well, it's fair. Yeah, fair.
Eclectic.
Eclectic. He's an interesting fellow. You need to look him up. Ray.
Apparently, I'm definitely gonna listen to some more of his stuff. So
He played a concert at a place not too far from here called Hippie Jacks. And a friend of mine plays down in Hippie Jacks from time to time too. And the concert is on here for Ray. His name is Ray Wiley Hubbard. And he's
Wiley Hubbard.
He's actually a really good songwriter. That's just one of his obscure things that I started hearing on the radio. And they actually played that on a local radio station till it got so popular they had to, I think they quit because every day somebody was wanting them to play it, believe it or not. Because that's the kind of people we are here in East Tennessee. Good morning, Space Mountain Dave. I didn't actually miss it, but I didn't want to break up the song. It's sort of a national anthem around here. And Mike caught the sourdough biscuits thing, so please say that again.
So I got a vet here. My son's taking him up on the mountain elk hunting this morning. Well, they're getting ready to leave, or they've left now. But I got up this morning and made sourdough biscuits and gravy, and been up since about 5:30. And homemade sourdough biscuits, and then the young man got to go outside on my back porch and look at a big old cow moose here a few minutes ago. So it's been a good morning.
Was it the one with calf? Was they out there again or a different one?
Pardon me?
Was it the one with the calf or was it a different one?
She didn't have a calf with her, so either he wandered, she run him off, or because he's a bull calf and he was getting pretty big.
Yeah,
so she either run him off because it's getting to be rut time, or it was a different cow. They all kind of look alike. So,
gotcha. Hang on just a minute, Miss Brenda. What do you speak? He told me to speak for myself. What do you mean? You've lived in this house long enough that you should know that sort of thing. Ian said he loved the shot of the crowd in that video. Wait till you ought to see the one from Hippie Jack. That's one I should show you because that's a whole different crowd of people there. Did I miss anybody else? Mike, did you tell Diana why the flag was flying today? I'm flying the Canadian flag today, Mark, in honor for Mike, and because they had that killing spree up there last week. The armed suspect with the knife, I think, and I started to say the shooter, but it wasn't a shooter; it was a stabber.
Really?
Yeah, he killed 4 or 5. It was him and another guy or his
Right.
brother. I'm not sure which. And then one of them ended up dead. They must have gotten a fight. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you're running around with knife fighters, though.
Yep.
It was crazy, Diane. I agree. Although I can't. Yeah, there were 2. I thought they were 2 brothers. I knew they had the same name, but I never actually heard anybody say that for sure. Down here, anyway. And then they found one of them dead, apparently of knife wounds. So they must have got in a fight, and one took the other one out. And then they caught. Did they find him dead, Diana or Mike? I can't remember now. And I'm going to remind everybody to possibly hit that thumbs up or the thumbs down. Why am I not signed in? Okay, now
I don't know.
well, I don't know either. I'm getting tired of this morning. I've not had the best of mornings.
Oh, Brenda said speak for yourself, East Tennessean boy.
Well, how about that? A little rebellion in the household here.
The rebellion going on in the household.
Yeah, you know what they'd say down here, though, Mike? They'd say it ain't the guy. It wasn't the knife that killed him. It was the guy holding it. Oh, I have to ask, Diana.
Although we've been like as a species of creature, we've been killing each other with rocks for like thousands of years.
Well, you do have a point there. I have to ask Diana. That's what I thought they found him dead. Did he? Okay, this may sound ridiculous, but did he kill himself with a knife? That's not the easiest thing to do. Well, I guess you could cut your wrists or something, but I mean, it's not like, putting a bullet through your own head or something. It's one of the victims was a veteran. Well, that sucks. And that's what that's what Mark was doing this morning. He had I guess you told him that you had a vet.
Yeah, we had a young Marine at the house today that won the Navy Cross, and we've taken him hunting one time before and got him one elk already. He shot a bull with his bow.
That was last year, though, right?
That was last year, and he's gone, and he's back. We get these guys, and we can't get rid of them, and that's okay.
Hey, John, I didn't see you, buddy. You slipped in on me. He's been listening. Did you get to hear Snake Farm? For Ian, I can play it again. Ian's trying to memorize it today. I got to send him a copy of the lyrics.
He's making breakfast, lunch, and dinner. John is.
Wow, John, you're a busy person. Meow, come here. Come here, old man. You can't stand there and yell at me.
The guy took drugs and stabbed himself and bled out during the car chase.
That's determination for you, though. It's good to know he had a vision and he stuck to it, I guess. They say young people today don't have any, that. That takes gumption. No snakes. Dave, you don't like snakes? Uh-oh.
Well, we love them.
You might have to cover your eyes.
Tune us out today.
I'll let you hang around and talk, but I'll tell you when to shut your eyes, avert your eyes. That's the word I was looking for. And I've got some bad news about that, actually.
Averting your eyes?
No, my slideshow. Somehow or another, between last night late and this morning early, it got erased. So I've got yeah, I spent a lot of time on that too. But I've got the pictures. I'm going to show the pictures. I just don't have them laid out like I had them laid out. So we'll have to make some of it. We'll have to dance to our own tune. He takes alligators. Well, you got plenty of those down there, Davey. You know, Dave's a Michigander, moved to. I knew Ian would be sad. Yeah, all my government training film.
We had a whole government training film ready for Ian.
Yeah, it's all gone, Ian. I apologize, buddy. Speaking of government training films, when I first started or went to UT for my degree, hey, hang on a minute, I got a cat fight.
Well, there's not many dog fights at my house. Our own tune. You're funny, GI. Good morning, John. I hope you're making redfish for dinner or something like that, or flounder or something cool. We had our first frost of the fall finally. Usually it happens in mid-August, but it wasn't much of a frost. You're muted.
I'm not now. I says, good thing Carol wasn't here. She'd be totally disillusioned with Teddy's reaction to that.
You had a big scrap?
Well, I think one of two things happened. I can't see the door. I pushed the door up because Brenda echoes if she's on the show or she's in the room. And now Teddy's come through that door, and you know how big Teddy is, but he don't open it that far. He just comes around it. Spooky came down, and Spooky left. So he either got stuck in the door and started squawking, started complaining, or he met Chloe, which is Teddy's little sister, nose to nose going through the door, and they got into a tussle, which meant Teddy had to go join in because he's gonna, beat up on whoever. And so now they finally got through the door before I could get there, and they went tearing upstairs, and Brenda broke it up. So anyway, hopefully nobody got cut. Somebody usually ends up cutting those scuffles.
Well, they run that one claw out,
Yeah. Teddy's nose is cut. He's got several cuts on his nose where his little sister did that. Well, they're the same age, but she's way, way smaller than him. Diana said they haven't had any frost yet, Mark. So what's the temperature this morning? Well, it don't matter.
It wasn't a hard freeze. I don't think it was down clear to freezing, but there was frost all over the windshields and whatnot.
Well, where you're at, it could still turn out to be a 90-degree day, though, right? I mean, not.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be miserable again today. It's been that way for weeks.
Down here, it doesn't do that here. It stays muggy all night long, and so the heat stays on, and it's nighttime's just as miserable, almost as miserable as daytime. Yeah,
we'll do 60, 70 degrees temperature shifts in 24 hours easy.
Fun. So, John, you're saying salmon tomorrow. Is that fresh caught salmon by you, or are you buying it, getting it from somebody else? Normal Wyoming weather. I remember snowing in May. Yeah.
I've seen it snow every month of the year here. All
You
12 of them. I've seen it snow on the 4th of July 3 times. But it
Mike,
didn't.
you like salmon on donuts? What'd you say?
Sure wasn't going to snow on the 4th of July this year. We've been miserable hot.
I remember not that long ago you had snow. I mean, it's not, you had, for here it was a late snow. For you, maybe not. I can't remember when it was, probably May or June you had snow.
Well, I got a rancher buddy that came off of his upper place up by the mountain just here a couple weeks ago, and it was 100 degrees. And he was like, I don't think it's ever been 100 degrees in Lincoln County, Wyoming, ever. And
may not have been.
It's been hot, but it was good for the hay crop. I got twice as much hay as we've ever had, so it's good. I mean, that was good. That part was good.
Yeah, I know that. I know how that works. Mark's talked about that. I've talked to other people, but Mark's mom lived in Montana for a few years. She didn't like it either. I've heard her speak on it. That fact, in fact, but,
yeah, Mama doesn't like it cold in the summertime.
No.
I don't think she likes it cold anytime, but summer especially.
Pikes Peak on August. Yeah, I don't doubt that. That's high enough that it stays chilly up there all the time too, or not too hot. Brenda said never met a salmon she didn't like. That's not true. She might not ever met a crappie she didn't like.
No, she never met a salmon that she did like.
Oh, that she did like. Oh.
I kind of lean that way too, and unfortunately, I live in a salmonid heavy part of the world and don't have a lot of other fish, and so my wife loves them though, so that's a good thing.
Depends on how they're fixed.
We like grilling fish, so that's how we usually do fish.
Well, I was going to say something else relevant to this particular conversation, but I know one thing I was going to say. I spent in 1972, way back in the Stone Age, I spent a couple of weeks at Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico, and we were there the last week or week and a half of June and part of early July. Seems like we got back to Tennessee on July 8th or something, and it was pretty much a 2 or 3 day drive back in the bus. But every day about 5 p.m. we had a hailstorm, and we thought that was unbelievable. And we got up to the top of what they call Mount Baldy, and it's 12,000 feet, or a little over 12,000 feet, and there was snow up there, and that was late June. And yeah, near Cimarron, John. That's correct. Oh, you've been there too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in that country, all that country around there stays snowed up, or used to. I don't know if it does anymore, but used to keep snow drifts up there on the mountain year round.
Mike wants us to stop talking about snow, so good morning, Dave. Adventures by Dave is in the room.
John was at Philmont in 1976.
Those were good years.
That was probably a good time to be there too.
Yeah, I bet it was. Did they do John, I've never asked you that, but did they do any kind of special celebrations or anything for the bicentennial? You know what? I have to tell this. My 1976 is one of the favorite years of my life because we got to celebrate the bicentennial of this country live and in person. And that'll probably, I know it won't happen to me again. I knew I'd never make another centennial. And I thought it was great. I mean, I loved it. I loved everything about it, all the different celebrations, the stuff they did on TV, like in New York Harbor, where they sailed all the tall ships in the river there, and just everything. All right, so Dad, we said hi, John. Hope he's doing okay today. But
I got to see Ken Sylvie shoot a guy with a black powder charge in a parade in Oak Hill, Ohio.
I've heard that story. Is that the same one?
No, he shot a hornet's nest out from under mom and dad's eaves on that big 2-story house and shot a hole through the aluminum siding or vinyl siding with a patch. and Dad always accused him of putting a lead ball in there and touching it up.
You had to explain, guys.
We had an Indian battle going on in the streets of Oak Hill, Ohio, and they were just using powder, no patch, just
powder.
And Ken touched one off at an Indian that was charging him, and he left a little tattoo on the guy.
I bet he did.
And regular people don't think that's funny, but I thought it was hilarious.
Well, there was that the occasion where Ken overcharged his rifle and he fired it and it went skidding down the road?
Yeah.
I got to tell something about this first. Ken Sylvie was an older gentleman. Navy vet that Mark grew up knowing.
Navy vet.
You knew him from school, right? He was a janitor at your school.
So when I was in elementary school, he was the janitor at school. And I went to he had a little office that he kept his supplies and things in. And I went in there one day and there was a muzzleloader leaning in the corner at school. Because that was cool in those days.
Yeah.
And and I said, well, my dad builds those. And that became a lifelong friendship.
He was an interesting gentleman. I got to tell something else on him since we're talking about veterans. And like he said, Ken was a Navy vet, and Ken was on board. He told me that he spent most of his World War II time on a Jeep carrier, which was one of the many small aircraft carriers that the U.S. built so they could build them quickly and move a lot of airplanes to the Pacific Theater. And that's what he went over there on, was one of those small carriers. And that's all they were for, basically, was to ferry warplanes back and forth. But they were in combat and stuff. And anyway, but what Ken told me was that he was there at the end of the war. He was still out there, and he was one of the first people to occupy or to go into
Japan.
I think it was Hiroshima, but it might have been Nagasaki after the war, the bomb dropped. I think he told me he was there about 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
which probably wasn't good for him. I mean,
Right.
who knows what was still radiating over there, but he was one of the first. I've met 2 people that were involved in that end of the war bombing. And one guy was in a plane and saw it from above, and Ken Sylvie was there on the ground. Which one was that?
Oh, that's Boudreaux.
He
He's
sound like he's trying to talk.
he's got a hold of Hank's front leg, dragging him around by his teeth and growling.
He's a bad one. He is.
He's a tough little devil.
One last recognition for the Queen here. I heard yesterday or last night that she was famous for having corgis.
She
But
was.
She also bred dogs, and she created a porgy or something they called it. I don't know if it was a poodle and a corgi or I believe it was a dachshund and a porgy. And I thought about Boudreaux.
Well, it's funny. Boudreaux's half dachshund, half border collie,
Right.
and as far as I'm concerned, he's a mutt.
Well, he's a good man.
And two of our kids have poodle something crosses, and they all have names now like they're actual breeds, and they're just mutts.
Yeah.
Labradoodles and whatever doodles, and one of them's got a Labradoodle, and it's the second one they've had. And
there's a golden doodle now too.
And they have golden. The other ones have. What's that other dog they got?
Jessie?
Yeah,
Springer
a Springer Doodle.
Oh, I've never seen a Springer Doodle.
So it's a little dog. They've got they crossed a Springer Spaniel, bird dog with a miniature poodle. And so they're just little bitty dogs, they're about, I don't know, 15 pounds, 20 pounds maybe.
I wonder if she'd hunt grouse.
Well, I don't know. She seems like, I don't know. She might. They're never going to hunt grouse with her.
No, I get that.
Grandpa might steal it and take it up on the hill.
Well, I had an uncle that was his favorite dog, and that's for grouse hunting around upper East Tennessee, on the mountains, and he always had Springers. Yeah.
Yep.
He loved his Springers. Hey, Cal, you're not late. We're talking about things that happened today. Or
doing the same thing we always do.
Yeah, starting slow, catching up on everything from the Queen to the.
Tina's not here giving us a hard time about squirrels.
Well, you know what? She may be in the background because, hey, there's Carol. Well, hey, hi, Carol from Cedar Point. I hope you can hear me long enough. Glad you weren't here a few minutes ago. You would have not liked it. Teddy got in trouble. Teddy was being mean to one of our other old cats. I think he caught him cornered.
Brenda wishes she was at Cedar Point with Carol.
Who said that? Oh, Brenda. Yeah. Well, that's probably true.
I could see her waving her arms coming down the roller coaster right now.
If I could get her up there by, snapping my fingers or something, I'd send her up there today. Okay, I got to figure what I'm going to do here. We were going to talk about snakes today. Ted, look at that. Teddy is an angel. Well, maybe I did misunderstood, as I say. Maybe it wasn't him that was doing all the growling and fighting and hissing and grabbing, but I think it was. He's an angel 98% of the time, but every once in a while he gets a little.
Well, he might be like Michael. He's an archangel. And they were kind of bad. They weren't bad angels. They were just warlike angels.
I saw that movie at your house in New Mexico.
Michael?
Yeah, I never seen it. You had it, and
I love that movie.
And I liked it too after I saw it. That was an interesting movie. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna. Bear with me while I try to set what I've got. I've got my pictures in a folder. So basically, what I'm going to have to do is just open that folder up and just look at some snakes. And they're not going to be in the right order. I'll try to sort through some, but that's probably not the right one I should open with. Now that I look, let me
But
see.
I'm very appreciative of your use of Echistrodon
Yeah,
because that's my favorite genus of snakes.
yeah, mine too. That's why I put it up there.
They're all cool.
That's why I put it up there. I thought you might appreciate that. In fact, okay, folks, Teddy is defending his personal space. Well, no, okay, that's not really true. His space was right here in this chair beside me, but he took off around the corner because he heard his older brother around there hissing it, doing something. I'm afraid, I'm kind of afraid Spooky might have been stuck in the door because I think he was going through the door and maybe he caught it with his back leg and couldn't get through. And when Teddy heard him getting upset, he went to help. And his help was
he was helping.
Yeah, he was helping. So I will warn you ahead of time that if you have a phobia of seeing snakes, you're getting ready to see some. However, I would like to hope that we can look at these and get,
And they're just pictures.
They're just, I know, but I know some people that can't do pictures, buddy. I knew somebody that would leave the room if you put one up on the screen. I'm trying to remember how to do this. Okay, here I go.
So speaking of phobias,
yeah,
the jarhead I had at the house this morning, he's after he got out of the Marine Corps, he became he's a therapist guy now. He was doing that with vets for a while, and now he does it with troubled youth or somebody. And he and my son were talking about something, and Samuel told him that he didn't like handling. I think he said he didn't like handling styrofoam because it squeaks and it feels weird. and Adam said, "Well, that's a phobia," and I only partially heard it. And I said, "Well, what's the phobia?" And he goes, "Well, that's a fear of something." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, Jarhead." I got that part.
Yeah, those experts like that, they have a way of narrowing it down.
He poked me right in the eye.
All right, ready, set. Here we go down this trail.
There's the best Echistrodon of them all.
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
That's a weird picture, though.
Yeah, I found a lot of pictures of Echistrodon, this particular Echistrodon, and he's eating a bug or something. So it may be that's a water hose.
I think it's a cicada.
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
They eat a lot of cicadas.
So that's probably a not too big of a guy. Buddy, I got some pictures here you ain't going to believe.
Well, you have some photos of this species, and I guess we should tell people that this is a northern copperhead.
This is a northern copperhead, yes.
Which is a venomous snake.
Possibly, though, the least dangerous of the venomous snakes in this country.
Yeah, people get bitten by these not all the time, but many people have not even sought medical treatment after they get bitten by a copperhead. So
wait a minute here. Oh, Diana said, wow, that's quite the career change.
Yeah, he went from an infantry Marine to a therapist.
How many times did he tours of the sandbox?
He had several tours. He won the Navy Cross, and he got shot really bad 13 times. So
wow. Mike said he had a snake. He had snake snoop. I can't talk. Snake soup one time.
Never again.
Hang on a minute. Now I can say that word better.
They're better when they're fried. Fricasseed, yep.
Oh, I've never eaten a copperhead. I must say.
No, me neither.
Rattlesnakes are.
We ate rattlesnakes out there at Cimarron.
Yes, we did out near Cimarron. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, in the Cimarron, but we
We were right there on the Cimarron
Yeah.
River, right outside of Philmont.
We sure were. So anyway, that's one version. Now these are mixed up. That's the problem with these. I had them all sorted and in groups, and
Oh, that's a beauty.
in that though, look at the color that matches that. I think these were in a group of camouflage pictures.
Now what subspecies is that?
I'm not sure if it said that.
That's got to be a Transpecus or something.
Yeah, it's too dark for one of ours. It doesn't. It's not. But it's very.
Well, look at those
It
two eye
matches that
spots.
Do what?
All those light markings, they've got two eye spots in each one of those markings.
Oh, they do, don't they?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Why?
And there's a real close-up picture. Yeah, I've got some pictures of a copperhead that Mark and I caught, or he grabbed it, but we had it. It was a pretty long snake, but
That
it
was a
wasn't
huge cop. That was the biggest copperhead I've ever seen.
But it wasn't huge around yet. It hadn't got that kind of girth like they did. And but I couldn't avoid this picture because it's just such a good close-up.
So if you look at that snake, if we haven't weirded everybody out yet, so these are called pit viper. They're echistrodons are part of the pit viper group, like rattlesnakes and cottonmouths. And they have if you look forward of his eye, you'll see a nostril that's close to the tip of the nose, and then there's actually two pits. There's a big deep pit and a smaller one forward of that big deep pit. No, that's the nostril. So if you just a little forward, go back a little bit, right there. There's another little tiny pit that you can't really see unless you got them in your hand.
Yeah.
And they have a membrane in there. And that pit is a sensory, so they got a nostril they can smell with. They've got a tongue that they gather scent information with. And then they've got this pit, or the double pit, that is a heat sensing organ. And they can literally tell like the difference of like 1/1000th of a degree. And so if a mouse or something, something that's got some heat to it comes by, they know that instantly. I mean, they can target in on it, and they've got one of those on each side of the head, which allows them to, it's like having another different weird kind of set of eyes, actually. And
that's one way to put it.
It's they're the most highly evolved snakes in the world, that because of all the cool.
I didn't realize that they were that at that point, but that's cool. And you'll notice the eyes. Another thing that everybody always looks at me funny and said, "Well, who the hell's going to get close enough to see their eyes?" But usually you can. And that all the poisonous snakes in this country have slit eyes like that one does, or cat eyes we used to call them, but.
Yeah, they've got that vertical pupil.
Yeah, and you'll see in a minute, I'll show you a non-poisonous snake in this country. But that doesn't, if you go out of the country, don't go by that, because...
if you go to the old world or Africa, get the whole eyeball thing goes out the
window. I think cobras are round-eyed, or some
they
of them
are
anyway.
mambas and cobras and all those. But they've got a lot of pit vipers over there too.
Yeah.
But in America, they're all of our venomous snakes, except for coral snakes, which
Right.
have round pupils,
Yeah, I've got a couple pictures of them too.
are slit-eyed like that.
Okay, next picture, and I don't know what that picture is. Well, I've got 2 or 3 copperhead pictures.
Oh,
That's a good one.
Beauty. That's an
Them
Osage.
And that's laying there in their leaves and stuff too. And if you don't think they can't hide, you've never been out in the woods walking around and stepped over one. Oh, now see, that's not a snake I would have put there normally. That is an indigo snake.
Big old indigo snake.
I got a picture of a bigger one here in a minute. Those are
They-
beautiful snakes.
They used to use those as at circuses back in the day, like in the teens and 20s, as they would say they were charming cobras,
No,
and they'd be using a big old indigo snake because they're harmless, but
they're
I mean they can put a hurt on you if they
well,
bite.
yeah, they could, but they don't tend to. You got to really make one mad. They're pretty gentle.
Yeah, and we've got
Snakes,
two. I can't remember if they're full species or subspecies. We've got the Texas indigo snake,
Right.
and which is kind of it's only part of it's kind of indigo, and the rest of it's kind of a brown color.
Got a brown. I know it's got brown under its chin, or
And then the Florida version,
which
and
this is.
it's the largest snake in North America.
Dave, you could have these guys. Dave may have left us. I don't know, but these guys, this snake actually, and this kid that's holding it is part of a program in Florida where they're trying to, help these guys survive.
Yeah, they're in trouble.
Yeah, this is one snake that's been in trouble, and what gets them is what usually gets any kind of wildlife. It's habitat loss. These guys live in they lived in gopher tortoise burrows primarily,
Right.
in Florida, and gopher turtles used to be really common. Well, gopher turtles aren't common anymore, or as common, because of all the construction and building that's going on in Florida. So their habitat has been going away really pretty quickly. And so they're making a great effort down there to work on that. There's a lot of web pages about that. If you're really interested in the efforts to save a species, that's a good one to look at. And the pictures, the site I got these pictures off of, were basically talking about the fact that they seem to be making a comeback, or at least the numbers are up from what they were. Making a comeback and numbers are up might be not exactly the same, but it might be getting close. It's getting better than it was anyway.
Cool.
There's a really up close picture of that.
There's a good view of the pit and the nostril.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a smaller pit forward of that really deep pit and there's a membrane between the two pits, and it
Really can't see that other one.
no, it's a difficult. Yeah. Anyway, it's
there.
It's a cool adaptation.
Now let's see who the next friend is. Oh, another copper. Oh, I promise they're not all copperheads today. And this has got to be a zoo shot or something, because that copperhead is laying in there with some kind of black snake. From here, I would say a rat, big black rat snake. Maybe. Or an indigo. I don't know. It could be an indigo, but they're in there together apparently, and that's not necessarily how you would see them. I don't know that they would bother each other in this case, but
yeah, you wouldn't want that to be a big old king snake, because it'd just eat the copperhead.
Copperhead would be gone already. I've got some pictures of that too here in a minute. And that's basically the range of the southern copperhead, according to some. I don't remember where I got this map, and
That's all the subspecies.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look at that beauty.
And look at that beauty. Now we're getting into the rattletails. And I don't remember if this one spelled this out, but this to me looks more of a canebrake. But
That's a canebrake, but now they've decided that, well, maybe. I haven't read the literature lately, but
me either. But
at one point they had decided, canebrakes were considered a subspecies or maybe even a full species of
timber rat.
rattlesnake.
Well, yeah.
And then they decided they were just timber rattlesnakes with a different color phase.
I'm gonna stand up and stretch. Keep talking.
And I'm not sure what the status is now, but this
Yeah, I'm
is
not either.
this is a large snake, and they'll get up to about 6 feet long. I've never seen one that big, but I've seen them, 5.5 footers probably, and heavy bodied.
I've got pictures of that too. They get huge.
As you can see, it's a very cryptic critter. Very camouflaged, and they're not too. I never met one that was very aggressive, unless you were, messing with it or something. But they're exceptionally common in parts of the country. Arkansas is just eaten up with the things. Pretty cool to find.
They're also eat up with cottonmouths too.
Yeah, cottonmouths and pygmy rattlesnakes and a bunch of stuff, but copperheads. But it's just kind of a cool snake, and like I said, I don't know what the status is. I don't know if they can, because timber rattlesnakes in parts of the country are considered endangered.
Yes, they are.
And I don't know what I don't know what they consider the status on this Atracaudatus, the canebrake, is.
Yeah, I don't either. But I tell you something, they're not as, none of these guys are as common as they used to be. I'll tell you that. I spent several years. Get back up here, guys. I had to stretch my gluteus maximus there. The muscle is starting to hurt. I spent several years in some mountain areas around the lakes that were supposed to be just full of copperheads and timber rattlers, and which is the primary rattlesnake we have here. Well, there might be an eastern diamondback here, but unlikely. I mean, there's going to be a canebrake or mostly just what I'd call a timber rattler. But and I never saw one. I ran into guys that worked in this one area that I was walking boundary line in. I had about 11 miles of rough mountain terrain, and guys that were riding bulldozers around cutting roads through it. The private part that was adjacent to the public part. They told me stuff like, oh, they ran over 6 yesterday with the tractor, or they killed 6 yesterday with the bulldozer. I mean, I heard that stuff all the time, and I don't know what they were saying, because I spent weeks and weeks in that on that side of the mountain, and you know me, I'm looking for snakes.
Right.
I carried a snake stick with me all the time, and when I was doing this, hoping I would find something. And the only thing I ever saw was a big garter snake. Never saw the first rattlesnake. Never saw the first copperhead, dead or alive. And I think they're getting scarce. I really do. Now
and the problem with timber rattlesnakes in particular. And I don't know if it applies to the canebrake rattlesnake, but with timber rattlesnakes, they're very faithful to their den sites.
Yes, that's true.
And that's been their undoing, is that their den sites get destroyed, and then they're just gone. They don't move to another den site. They just don't exist anymore.
And a lot of people don't realize that because these guys, the Kistrodons do this too. And maybe one of the studies I've read about them, it was mostly about copperhead. One,
Talking about den sites.
oh,
and creepy.
well, they. No, I'll tell you a story about that in a minute, Diana. It won't be that creepy, but it wasn't a good one. There are some states here, like Mark was saying, where these snakes are, well, timber rattler. I'll get to just a normal timber rattler here in a minute, but they're protected. And they are, I think, when you get to the Northeast, the places where they might have a few, they are protected.
Well, they might be federally on the list now.
They might be.
Because they're in trouble pretty much everywhere they live, except for this subspecies, the canebrake, which is
these pictures, I believe, came out of Alabama.
Common.
Interesting side note, not really a squirrel, but we'll call it that. So do you know what, I'm going to ask another question first. Do you know what kind of snakes those areas have, Diana, up your way? Because I'm not sure. Yeah, it is kind of creepy. If you don't like snakes to begin with, you won't like that. Den sites, where you were talking about how they are that, and they've got hibernaculums, which are the dens they go in over winter in. I don't know if they don't sleep the winter through, but they're in these dens, and they're slowed down because it's cold, but it's warmer in the dens than it is outside. And they also tend to stick in maternity areas. So a gravid snake or a pregnant snake of these species, copperheads, timber rattlers have been known to do this too. They will go, and this might be within 5 miles of their winter denning areas, and they'll go out and they'll give birth. These snakes basically are considered live birthers. If you cut one open, you'd see that the snakes are in there in little eggs, and but they come out alive. Now, of course, there's no nerve.
They hatch inside.
They hatch inside, yeah. But anyway, they'll go to the same areas every year or every other year whenever they are gravid. And the other snakes do this too, and they have their young pretty much in one area. They found some studies, some guys I knew actually had worked on that years ago. They wrote a paper and wrote a small book about that. And it's really quite fascinating how that works. They're not just out there randomly in the woods. They have areas, and then copperheads especially, and like Mark was saying about how sensitive they are to temp changes and stuff. They like to get out, and they'll go to certain areas, and that's where they hunt, and they tend to get, and then they'll get back over to the, they can go back to their dens in the wintertime, but they'll lay along logs and wait for mice to run. They call it runways, or how they're explained. And mice, thing about wild mice, woods mice, deer mice, that sort of thing. They like to get up. They don't like to run on the ground if they can help it. They'd rather get up on a tree trunk or a limb, and they'll run above the ground. It's safer for the most part. Copperheads will lay along those logs, and they'll sense a mouse coming before it gets there. And when it goes by, they'll pop it, and then they'll go find it and eat it. And they have had lunch, But it's amazing some of the intricacies of it. They're not nearly as, I don't know, I would say weird, but they'd probably disagree with me. Red-sided garters. I was going to say, you guys probably have some rattlesnakes in a certain part of Canada, but I don't know if you have much of that or anything. water snakes seem to me like it'd be cold for poisonous water snakes, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to swear to that because I've not looked into it yet.
So we don't have very many snakes where I live here in Wyoming. We've got one species of garter snake, the wandering garter snake. And they're the same ones that they have up in Canada that they literally will come out. They'll emerge from the den when there's still snow on the ground.
Oh, wow.
And they'll get in a great big ginormous pile.
Yeah, I've seen that.
They shift position. Somebody's going to be warm and somebody's going to be cold. And the ones that when breeding takes place, soon after they emerge from the den, the snakes that are on top of the pile do all the breeding, and the ones that were at the bottom, well, they just lose out because they're still moving too slow.
Which is another way of saying the survival of the fittest in a sense.
Yeah.
Now, this guy right here is one of my other favorite snakes. Well, kinda. And it's probably a lot of people's favorite snake because this is a king snake, a version of a king snake. And right this minute, I can't remember. That's not Eastern. I'm not sure which one this is. There's so many of them. I don't remember where these pictures came from. But what these guys do that would make a lot of people happy is they eat snakes. They eat other snakes. And they'll eat poisonous snakes. They'll eat a rattlesnake. They'll eat a copperhead. I guess they could eat coral snakes, which we'll see here in a minute. But I wanted to point something out. Maybe you can see it. This snake is probably not very big. But look at the body. See how the body is pretty much the same shape and size all the way down through here. It doesn't flatten out. Look at this this rattlesnake. If you can really look at it, this is a section of its body, and it's flattened out like it's triangular shape, but it's like a big flat Hershey's Kiss, kind of. And it goes from right up here. This is the spine, and then it slopes down to this side. They have a body shape that's kind of like this. A poisonous snake in this country, at least, and in some other countries, they're built like this. They have a whole different body shape than most rat snakes or king snakes or that sort of thing. I guess that's partly because of what they eat, how they eat, and what they do. This guy can wiggle in and out of barns and get in all kinds of rock piles and chase mice or other snakes, lizards, and whatnot. And a rattlesnake or a copperhead doesn't really do that. So, you have any comments?
No,
And this is a version this is a young rat snake, which would probably basically be a black rat when he grows up. I've caught them that look like this, and I had one that I kept long enough for it to start to change color. Or this could be there are gray rat snakes too, but when they're young, even the black ones we have here look more like this than black. It's better camouflage, I suppose. And I think that's a Masaga or a pygmy. I'm not sure.
I think that's a little banded rock rattlesnake.
Well, you know what? It is a rat. And Mark's probably caught plenty of them, but if you remember, that's what we were hiking one day near the Arizona state line in New Mexico. Me, your dad, and Philip, I believe.
Yeah.
And I was at the end of the line, and you guys all walked by, and I heard something. And I said, "What is that?" I said, "Listen, be quiet." And there was one of these little guys laying beside a rock or just under the edge of a rock, and everybody walked right over him. And he was rattling, but he wasn't making a real loud, he wasn't big enough to make a real loud rattle. Do you remember that? That was when you were working down there.
Yeah, they're in the Pelham Seals, and they right there on the Geronimo Trail. The Yeah, and that's just a little bitty guy. They're just small. They get about 18 inches long or so.
Yeah, they don't get big. Um, Interesting. This might classify as a factoid since it's not. There's different variations of it. But I read, for example, one place that said there's probably about 32 different species of rattlesnake in this country, and then probably some subspecies, and I wonder if some of those aren't subspecies anyway. But then Arizona has a web page up that's put up by the state, and they claim there's 45. But they were counting stuff out of Mexico too, which I'm
Well,
not counting.
but that's got to include subspecies.
Yeah, it's got to, and that's kind of what they were pointing out. But they list 45, but then when I went through their list, some of them were old Mexico snakes, so they dipped down a little further than normal.
So they were they doing all rattlesnake species?
Yeah, and
because when you get south of Mexico, you basically only have one. I can't even think of it. I think it's I think they call it a tropical rattlesnake.
Yeah, I think so.
It's Crotalus dorissus, and it's a big guy. But anyway, the diversity of rattlesnake species is highest in the desert Southwest.
Oh yeah, I was amazed at the different ones that we saw when I was out there a couple times with you. That blacktails and atrox, and there's a couple more that we saw. I can't think. I said blacktails,
banded rocks, and
just all kinds of things.
Prairie rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah, a lot of prairie rattlesnakes. Snakes shouldn't freak me out. They shouldn't really be able to move. They have no legs, fins, or wings. Worms are the same way, but the patterns they have are gorgeous. Yeah, they are. And it's all for camouflage, really. I mean, they can hide so well. Mark, we were off another time. We were in New Mexico, and his mom and dad and he and I took a little walk. We were out there. I had Jennifer, my oldest daughter, was with us, and Brenda, and we were in a motorhome. We took a motorhome out there and back one year for a vacation, and we were walking up through this little valley, or whatever you'd call it, New Mexico, and I think it was me. We were walking along, and I said, "Whoa, wait a minute!" And I looked down, and right under our feet, practically, were was a prairie rattler, and we got to looking, and there were three right there together. I now know that those three was probably a maternity site, because at least two of them had eggs in them. As I recall, maybe all of them did, and they were all three within 10 feet of each other, or 12.
We harvested all three of them.
Yeah, we did. At that time, we did. We harvested. Our bloodlust was a lot higher back then. But we,
Brenda's making a really good point that snakes aren't slimy. People think they're slimy. They're dry. Yeah. Even water snakes are dry.
That's true. They don't feel slimy when you pick them up.
And when you've got one in your hands, if you've got a non-venomous snake in your hands and let it crawl through your hands, it's pretty cool how their muscles work to make them go.
And they are, even small snakes are very strong.
Yeah.
Constrictors like rat snakes and everybody thinks about a boa constrictor, but a lot of the smaller snakes are constrictors. King snakes and rat snakes and other snakes, but they're surprisingly strong. What always amazed me was how strong these guys are. Well, I don't know about that guy, the banded, but rattlesnakes and copperheads, while they don't do the same things, like a constricting snake does, they're very strong. And if you're not careful, they can pull their head through your fist literally and get back to a position of body. Um, and they are body, especially when you're messing with them. Which leads to another thing about here in this region of the country, North Carolina, West and Southwest Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. Another threat to poisonous snakes here are snake handling churches. And that's a real thing. And there are people that go out and catch snakes just for churches. Probably usually they're individual churches. There may be a market for that. I don't know. But there was a guy that actually made the news here one year that talked about going out and catching snakes for his church or the local churches that did snake handling. And of course, every year we get one or two people the preachers that get bit and die because they just they weren't right with God or whatever, but they didn't take antivenom and they didn't make it. Those are usually rattlesnake bites. Copperhead's venom is not as strong. It will hurt you. It can put you in the hospital, but is nowhere near as likely to kill you unless you have some kind of allergic reaction. Mark has had a friend who went through that out in New Mexico. He got bit by a rattlesnake, and tell him about
Body.
You tell him about Body and what happened to him.
Well, so we were out. He was doing his master's on rattlesnake species, and we were out collecting snakes pretty close to town one night. And actually, we were within just a couple of miles of the hospital, and we caught a little bitty, just a young of the year western diamondback rattlesnake, and he picked him up too far behind the head, and he just inverted himself, and because they're good at that, and stuck him with one fang in the end of his finger, his index finger, and we got him to the hospital in just a couple minutes, and and they did the whole eye test with the anti-venom. They put a little drop in your eye to see if you're going to have a reaction, and he didn't. So they gave him the anti-venom, and the next day he came into our graduate room offices wearing just a pair of loose fitting shorts, and he had hives all over his body and was swelling up, and he was having a pretty bad reaction to that anti-venom. So we had to take him back to the hospital and get him treated for that. And he said it was way worse than a snake bite.
Didn't he end up having to stay in the hospital a day or two because
they had to give him, massive doses of, whatever, epinephrine or whatever. And that got him hospitalized. The snake bite didn't. and he's a professional herpetologist that deals with venomous snakes regularly, and he can never take that stuff again. He had such a bad reaction to it. So if he gets bitten again, and he's pretty careful, he don't handle them with his hands anymore, I don't think. But you're always at risk. You might get bitten just by stepping on one. I got bitten by a prairie rattlesnake. I stepped right in the middle of his back, and he bit me in the big toe through my boot. I just had on lightweight hikers, but he gave me it was a dry bite. I never had any I had lost a little skin on the side of my toe, and that was it. I never swelled up or anything.
Yeah, you can, or I'll explain what a dry bite means. Whichever one of us wants to go, you're welcome to. Or I will.
Well, they're totally that delivery that. Venom is not for defense, it's for digestion. So they use that to kill their prey basically, and it starts pre-digesting the animal. Mammals in particular, well, lizards too, but they they don't. They're conservators of that venom. They don't want to use that venom if they don't have to. And sometimes just biting something will make it go away, which, and so that's a dry bite. If they bite, they have muscles that they have full control of to deliver that venom around the venom glands, and they don't have to inject you. And a lot of the bites, I don't know, I've heard estimates that probably a half to a third of venomous snake bites, at least our venomous snakes, are dry because they don't want to use that if they don't have to.
Yeah, and it does, and that doesn't mean, and this might be what happened in Mark's case. That doesn't mean there's not some venom in the fang or on the fang that might, depending on when they've used it last. And that, like Mark said, he lost a little skin on his toe, but so you never know. But if they have venom, you're going to know it real quick. Because another thing I remember Body saying, and he has a real name. That's just kind of a nickname he acquired. Was that he, if I recall correctly, he got bit in the finger, like you said, and he kind of said, "Well, that didn't even hurt," or something like that. And then all of a sudden, he said,
did it?
He said it felt like somebody had injected acid into his finger.
1,000 bee stings was what he was. I was driving him to the hospital, and he was like, "This hurts worse than anything I've ever had hurt."
That would be, I mean, of all the places to get bit that would hurt, a toe or your finger would be one of the worst. All right, next snake. Let's see what comes up next. I'm surprised as you guys because, like I said, they're mixed up. That's another one of the good guys, if you will. That's a rat snake, a black rat snake, and these are pretty common around here. They used to be common to see bigger ones. I've seen these guys up to 6 feet long, maybe longer. And folks around here that live out in the country, a lot of times would like to keep them in their barns. You can't always tell a snake where to go, but I know my granddad, both of them, actually, if they caught a black snake on property anywhere, they would take it and release it in the barn and let it eat mice out of the grain bin, the corn bin, and all that, because that's what they do for a living. These guys eat mice, and they can keep mice cleaned out of your barn better than a cat ever could. And I've had a couple. And if you really look, it's not obvious, but if you really look, remember a while ago we saw the grayish looking one. You could see a pattern in its scales. If you really look on these guys, a lot of times you can see that pattern. There's spots in there that are lighter and darker. And let me see, is it the belly of these guys that is checkerboard, or is that a king snake?
King snakes.
Yeah, king snakes have black and white spaces on their belly, and they look kind of like a checkerboard design. And these guys have more like lines spaced out checks, if you will, that kind of form lines on them. There's another bigger one, and you can see that one's got a lot of marks on him, or you can see the pattern. And that's one of our friends right there. I believe that's a prairie rattler.
No, that's a big old blacktail.
Or blacktail, yeah. And obviously it wasn't too happy, unless that's a fake and it's been mounted that way by a taxidermist. Now that I look at it, it might be. I don't know.
It's in kind of a weird.
Yeah, it is.
That's not what I would consider blacktail habitat. They're not usually in that much greenery.
Kay said, I doubt I'll be close enough to see their belly. I understand, Kay. And there's another canebrake, and you see how wide his body is. I mean, compared to this part, or they taper up real quick. They go from a pretty good sized head to pretty narrow body and neck, and then they get just whopping big. And if they swallow a big old rabbit or something, they're even bigger. And then they narrow back down. I mean, they're just so big. They're heavy. They're heavy, heavy snakes. The heavy body. And there's another. That's what I would call a true canebrake or a yellow one. I remember reading like a poster way back when about trying to encourage people to move west of the mountains and go to Kentucky and Ohio and settle that country. And one of the things they talked about were these giant yellow venomous snakes. And they were talking about these canebrake rattlers in the canebrakes and such in Kentucky. And which a canebrake is just like cane, which is
it's a patch of cane.
It's what?
It's a patch of cane.
Yeah, it's a patch of cane that kind of breaks up the woods. I guess that's where the break part came. But
American bamboo.
Yeah, American bamboo, and that's getting pretty hard to find these days too. Actually,
cane is
in places, yeah, because they've cut it. They've cut it all down and bulldozing crap.
Oh yeah.
And I believe that's a coach whip.
Humans is stupid.
Humans is stupid.
Now so I caught a coach whip in Arkansas one time, and they're biters. I mean, they're for real biters. They bite, and they usually bite at your face. And I grabbed a big old. He was one of those big ones that were like the back half of him was pink, and the front half was black. And I was working I just grabbed him back by his tail and started working my way up to get to his head. And he was biting me the whole time. And I was with Tim Patton at that time. And he was, by the time I got done, I was bleeding from all my arms and my face. And he was laughing.
These guys aren't poisonous, man.
He was laughing so hard. He was on the ground kicking his feet up in the air. He was laughing so hard.
What friends we have.
Because he was like, that if you catch like racers or coach whips, you're going to get bit.
Yeah.
A lot. They'll bite you. They bite and
okay, Mike.
They keep their mouth shut and they just jerk their head away and they leave their little teeth in you too.
Yeah, they kind of rip you as they don't have big fangs like the rattlesnakes and copperheads, like hypodermic needles. They've got a mouthful of smaller teeth that are kind of made to grab and hang on to something. So when they bite you, like Mark's saying, they tend to break teeth off and drag skin away. And but they're biters. That's one of their protections. They're not poisonous, but they are ornery. A lot of the water snakes are that way. I think they're just mad because they're cold and wet. I don't know. But they tend to be biters. Name that tune.
Well, the picture's so small on my screen. I think that's probably a cottonmouth, but
I don't think it is, and I couldn't tell for sure at first.
I can't see; it's too small.
I think it's a water snake. The head is not right for a cottonmouth, and you can't see the head very well. I know, and I blew the head. Oh, can I do that?
That's a water snake.
That's a water snake, but hundreds of these guys, if not thousands of these guys, every year give up their lives for the sake of
sort of kind of looking like a cottonmouth.
Yeah, sort of kind of looking like a cotton. Looks like a snake. John said, looks like a snake to him. Well, it is a snake. But it's not a cottonmouth or a water.
They will bite the bejesus out of you.
Yes, they will. They're just like that coach whip. They're biters. I mean, they're just trying to get you to let them down. But because of the markings and the color and all that, they get killed in places where water moccasins are let me back up. I'm going to say cottonmouths. Hit me if I say water moccasins. A lot of people call these water moccasins too. The term water moccasin to me actually used to mean a cottonmouth.
That's correct.
But it's gotten diluted because people see these and they think it's a water moccasin, so they kill them. And I think I don't know if it was you or me that knew the guy that worked at Tennessee Tech, and he said, or maybe he told me this story sitting in the grad room out at New Mexico State, that when he was working out there in Middle Tennessee, he had a guy said, "Oh, we got water moccasins all over the place, cottonmouths." And he said, and they said, "Well, not really. We don't have those here in that part of the state. We don't."
Right.
And he said, "Oh, yes, by God, we do. I'll prove it to you." And he come carrying in like a 5-gallon bucket a day or two later, just full of dead snakes. And not one of them was a cottonmouth.
Yeah, they were all water snakes.
Yeah, and he killed every one of them and thought surely they were poisonous and cottonmouths, and not one of them was.
So I was mentioning how these are real biters, and coach whips and racers are real biters. But I've never been bitten by a snake except that one rattlesnake I stepped on that I wasn't handling. I got to be clear on that. I have never been bitten by a water snake or a racer or a coach whip or any other snake except that one. And I was stepping on his spine, and I don't blame him. But I've never.
The thing about racers and coach whips, they move really fast. Yeah, and they're in a bigger hurry to get away from you than they are to hang around.
Yep, like I said, and I mean, Tim and I have intentionally chased snakes all of our lives, and it's just like I've been bitten literally thousands of times, but it was because I had the thing in my hands, was holding it, and didn't have a good hold on it. I mean, it's not, I'm not too bright. And he ain't either.
But these guys sacrifice their lives every year in the sake of looking like a water moccasin. And I'll show you a water moccasin in a minute. And remember this color pattern, because you'll kind of see why. But if you really look close, they're not. I mean, there's a difference. And there's yet another copperhead, and another copperhead. And another copperhead.
Oh, there he is.
Here's the guy I was talking about. This is a cottonmouth water moccasin, if you will. This is a true cottonmouth. Actually, I just noticed the fang. His mouth is wide open, but the fangs really aren't extended in that photo. But right there they are.
Yeah, they fold back.
Yeah.
They fold backwards to the rear, and when they're striking and injecting, those teeth swing on a swivel. Those two fangs swing on a swivel and point basically straight outward.
Yeah,
and that's the first cousin to that really beautiful copperhead. Same genus.
True. I've always thought these were about the orneriest snakes out there that were poisonous. Most even rattlesnakes and copperheads will avoid you, and these guys will too. But these guys will.
You stink.
If you pester them enough, or if you're too close, they tend to be. They'll charge sometimes. They're actually kind of hateful. But look how dark he is. And he's got that wide body. You can see here and over here, that wide body. I've got a couple of better pictures of him if we find them. And I'll never forget, I was in an airboat riding in the Everglades in Florida one time. And I looked down. The guy with the boat took me out to take some photographs. I've always been trying to be a photographer back then, at least. And we're riding along in the airboat, and I'm in the back seat, and he's up front driving. And I look down from the boat, and there's a huge cottonmouth just like that, laying right beside the boat with his head reared back open wide like that. That's an image that's still stuck in my brain. Now
Look
there's
at
a
that.
close. Go ahead.
Oh, I just said, look at that beauty.
Yeah, and look at the color patterns and stuff on this. Cottonmouths aren't always dark and ugly. They
Well,
get uglier as the bigger they get.
yeah, and the little ones when they're brand new born, and copperheads too. The tip of their tail is bright yellow, like neon yellow, and that's a lure for prey for those little snakes. They'll use that just kind of as a, come here, little guy. Here's something good to eat.
Ian's, well, yeah, that's what they used to talk. I've seen those pictures and stories too, Kay. I remember those from way back when.
Hoop snakes, they call
Hoop
them.
snakes, yeah. And Ian's he's got a pretty good idea for a lot of people, just don't handle them. That's a good way to avoid getting bit, Ian, the truth is, but some people just ain't that bright, I guess. Now there's a pretty good picture. This is a good picture of a cottonmouth, an older cottonmouth. You can see he's still got that pattern, but he's getting darker. And look at that body. Look how flattened out he looks. And that, I mean, they're just, once you see one or two and compare the bodies, you'll never mistake a non-poisonous snake in this country. Again, I'm going to specify in this country that looks like that. The only snake I know that can do that anywhere near that is a hognose snake.
Yeah, you remember that big black one that we were chasing across that bay? Back up! I thought I was dead for sure on that one.
Yeah, we were out to the area where they did have cottonmouths in Tennessee, and we were pretty sure we were chasing a hognose snake, which is harmless, and turned around, but he bowed up and on the bank when we chased him up to the bank, and he turned around and Mark and flattened that head out and that body out, because they'll do that. They mimic. And Mark started yelling, "Back up, back up." I was in the boat. He was standing in the bow of the boat. He got there first. Let's just put it that way.
I was reaching to grab him.
Yeah.
And he turned around. He turned around and flashed that white mouth. It's like, oh, but it was a hognose.
It was. And hognoses are funny. When you get one cornered like that, they'll do that. They'll mimic a cottonmouth or a poisonous snake in a way, but when they strike at you, they strike backwards. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. Instead of striking at you, they're actually pulling their head backwards, but it looks like they're striking.
And they roll over and play dead.
And they'll roll over and play dead. Yeah. We've had a couple of them do that.
And they actually have two fangs.
Well, they do.
Hognose snakes do. But those are specifically designed just to deflate toads, which are what their main food source. So they have a real mild venom and look at those beauties.
Mm-hmm. And there's a comparison. The copperhead and
that's a Florida subspecies. That cottonmouth's a Florida subspecies. They're the pretty ones. If you think snakes is pretty.
Yeah, you might not, and there's where that's showing those Florida subspecies right there where they're at, more or less. And I don't know why that part right there is green, because I damn sure bet you they're in there, or were.
That's probably town now.
Maybe, yeah, now it probably is. Hey, somebody's not.
We got some, hold on a minute. Okay. That's a big old Eastern Diamondback there.
Yeah, and that's not the position you really want to see him in.
So that's one of the world's largest venomous snakes.
Yes.
And
the largest we have here.
Certainly. Yeah, in the Western Hemisphere, that is the largest venomous snake. They'll get up over 8 feet long, and
Yeah.
I don't know what a snake like that would weigh. Probably, I don't know, 18, 20 pounds, maybe.
Oh, at least they're huge.
And they're big around as your
some
thigh.
big ones.
They're
Yeah.
literally big around as your thigh. And
They
yeah,
used to claim that in Florida they'd caught. There was an island in the St. Johns River area near Jacksonville where a friend of ours lived. Well, he lived in part of Jacksonville, but well, I said that we were a little bit north of there, but we'd go down and see him. And he used to talk about there was an island there that they literally called it Rattlesnake Island. And basically what it was an island that trash and garbage had got basically washed up on it. And it was full of rats and mice and mammals. And rattlesnakes, they're not a water snake, but just like we're not water people, we can swim, and so can they. And
yeah, they swim really well.
yeah, they swim well, and they would get out they'd go out to that island, and had a lot of really high concentration of snakes. And they used to have an annual snake drive down there. They were milking snakes at that time. They may have been killing them too, but the hospital, somebody down there would give so many dollars a foot if you brought them live rattlesnakes. And this guy swore that he'd seen a couple of 10-footers come off that island, but now I never saw them myself. But they certainly get over 8 feet, and that, like Mark says, that is a huge snake, a poisonous snake, because the body would be, like this, at least flattened out. I mean, I can't imagine what that'd weigh. I wouldn't even want to pick it up. It'd be heavy.
You were talking about those indigo snakes earlier.
Yeah, which this is another indigo.
Speaking of which, and how they were tied to gopher tortoises and eastern diamondbacks are as well. That sand duny.
Oh yeah,
gopher tortoise country. Impressive snake.
Yeah, both of them. This is another variety of king snake. I'm not sure if that might be a California. I'm not sure. You see a lot of these in the pet trade, and I had one for a while that was an albino. So every spot you see was black, was more of a white, and the parts that are kind of yellow were kind of yellow on mine. But that was he didn't bite, but I think because of the probably inbreeding or whatever they've done to breed, albinos, I think he wasn't I've caught wild king snakes that were much friendlier. Let's put it that way. And king snakes, when you pick them up, they're one of the things they do to you. They don't really bite you, but they will musk all over you.
They'll slime you.
They'll slime you. Yeah, it's almost like, it's kind of like they take a crap all over your hands or wherever touch, and it stinks. It's a musky, like a skunk, but it don't smell that good. And I guess when they do that for other critters, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth if they're trying to bite them. But if that's the worst thing they do, I don't know that I've ever had a king snake try to bite me. I've picked them up in the wild, and they'll slime me. They may wrap around my wrist and slime me on the arm, but they don't bite usually. I'm sure you can make one, but I don't think I've ever
been bitten by one either.
I don't think so. I've been slimed by them plenty, but I've never been bitten.
And I've caught them from.
They're really mild mannered snake. Temper-wise or temperament-wise, they're really mild mannered.
And I've caught them from all the way from North Carolina all the way to Arizona. And a whole variety of subspecies, and they're all like that.
And here we got one of the other poisonous snakes in North America. We have an eastern coral snake, which for its size is probably the most poisonous snake in the country. But I won't say they're the most dangerous snake in the country, because they rarely do they bite anybody. And and inject poison, but they can. But it just doesn't happen a lot. But these guys, again, a milk snake or a variety of king snake, there's both that mimic coral snakes. This is part of their defense. But there's a difference in the color patterns if you really look. Coral snakes, how does that go? Yellow on black, get back.
Red on yellow, it'll kill a fella.
Red on yellow, kill a fella, yeah.
Red on black, venom lack.
So look at this.
Which you need to start saying correctly because you've been calling it poison all the whole time.
That's true. I have.
And they're not poisonous. They're venomous.
They're venomous.
And they have venom, not poison.
I stand corrected.
just
venomous.
be anal about it.
Well, you can't take all the country out of me. What does this say? We're missing something over here. I know. John said that southern cottonmouth looks like our Jersey corn snakes with the more orange color. Yeah, kinda in a way. I'm sure it does. And Ian says,
I wonder what our moonshine buddy, the Sasquatch hunter with the long, beautiful golden locks.
Yeah, how many people raise your hand if you watched the videos I put on my webpage last week? Because if you hadn't, you need to. Diane, if you're leaving, bye. Thank you for coming in today. I hope you're not leaving just because of the snakes, but I'm sure you got things to do and it's getting noonish, so probably ought to start winding down here in a minute. I'm thinking this is. Well, I want to say it's a prairie rattler, but I'm not sure about that.
No, it's a Western Diamondback.
A Western Diamondback, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just can't see the tail. I'll show you why I say that. There's an Eastern Diamondback of a small coloration. That's probably a little bitty snake. Look at the buttons on his tail.
Yeah.
No. And that's a big one.
Another Western Diamondback.
Another Western, yeah. I was trying to see if you could see the pits.
Which is the second largest venomous snake in the Western Hemisphere, and the most dangerous. Because they've got a bad temper on them. They're really super abundant in places, and way more people get bitten by this species than any other in the United States. And it's the one that's most likely to cause you to expire.
True.
They're a big snake they get up to about 7 feet long and big, heavy bodied snake. And they've got huge venom glands and they're just kind of a nasty tempered snake.
And here's something that rat snakes also will eat this, an egg once in a while if they get a chance. And I've heard stories. I've seen one with an egg or two in it, but I've read stories or heard stories about the farmer coming into the barn and catching a rat snake in his nest, and it got 3 or 4 eggs in it. Just lump, 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 lump. But I've never seen that happen. I have seen one with eggs inside it.
Well, and it's interesting because there's that egg-eating snake I think they're from Africa. And they literally, that's all they eat is bird eggs. And they have structures within their skeletal system or whatever that break the shell. And they'll eat the egg and then regurgitate the shell.
Well, I don't know what these guys digest the shell.
I don't know what happens when rat snakes eat the egg.
I have heard that some people think they wrap around a tree limb or a post and bust the eggs internally. I don't know if that's true, but I don't know that it's not entirely, but I've never seen it. but I don't know if they throw up the eggshells. I've never heard of them doing that, so I'm guessing they can digest it or pass it through. I was
Yeah.
going to answer this question Ian asked about the moonshine buddy. He probably catches his snakes. He's probably the guy that takes them up to the snake handling church, Ian.
He's
Would be my guess.
He's taking them to church for definite.
Yeah. And here's another way you can kind of tell a big old water moccasin or cottonmouth. And that one, they're not afraid to fight water, wet feet or dry feet. They're ready.
So, and that's a really cool photo because when you see a snake in the water, and if you're in cottonmouth country, there's all kinds of water snake species, diamondback water snakes and broadband or different kinds of, water snakes that are big bodied. But when they swim, all you see is their head. You'll occasionally see like a little bit of their back as they're kind of swimming, back and forth. But generally all you see is their head. And on a cottonmouth, that just like that picture shows, they float totally on the top of the water, unless they dive intentionally because they feed on fish and frogs. If they dive under, then that's a different deal. But when they're just swimming across the body of water, they're floating just like that. So from a distance, you can tell like, oh, that's a cottonmouth or that's a water snake.
I've seen a rattlesnake go across a pond like that too.
And they float. Copperheads do it too. They all float completely on the surface.
And it may have to do with how wide their body is displacing water, I guess. But
yeah, I think they're doing that flatten out thing, that you were talking about.
That's what I think. I have a question for you. I never thought about this till right now. If they bite a frog and the frog,
they grab a hold of it.
They don't let go, I guess, because the rattlesnake or copperhead will bite the snake. They'll bite and inject venom into the prey species, and then they'll follow it by scent or by heat trail, and they'll find it.
Right.
These guys don't let go because if they let go of a frog or a fish, it's going to swim off and die.
Right.
I wouldn't think they could find that.
So we found a big old great big cottonmouth in Arkansas in a little mountain stream that had bitten a bullhead catfish, bit it in the head and had a hold of it, and it was starting to swallow it, and that fish was still alive, and that fish stuck its pectoral spines through the mouth of that cottonmouth, and they were both laying there dead.
Oh, wow. I could see how that would happen.
Which was kind of just and it was a big old cottonmouth. It was about probably a 10-inch bullhead catfish and a great big cottonmouth, 4.5 or 5 footer.
John, you probably know this. Some of you may not, but catfish have these bony spikes that kind of come out around their pectoral fins. And when you catch one and take it off the line or whatever you're doing with it, when you handle it, you got to be careful. They'll poke one in your finger or something or in your hand, and it hurts. It won't kill you, but it hurts. And that's what he's talking about, sticking through the cottonmouth's mouth or jaws and getting stuck. Whoops. I wanted Mark to see that one. This is I would call this another variety of a rat snake. This is probably a corn snake, actually, but they're all related. Now, I've got a feeling this one's dead. And I say that because after I got this picture, I got to looking at it, and it's got ants all over it. I'm not sure a snake would put up with that. But they would certainly eat the dead body. They would. Wouldn't you think, Mark? I suspect this is a dead snake because
it looks dead.
There's ants on it, and I don't. they wouldn't normally be there if the snake was alive and moving, but if they're starting to work on the carcass, they could be.
Yeah, that looks like a plains king snake.
Yeah, something like that. Well, yeah, it could be that too.
Or not a king snake, a Great Plains rat snake. And it's definitely dead. They're eating that.
Yeah. I wanted you to see this guy. There's a good look at that body flattened out.
Big old timber rattlesnake.
Look how black that tail is, man. And don't ask me why I say that. It just looks meaner.
And some of those old people where we grew up called those velvet tails because they just look, I don't know, it's hard to describe. They're real smooth looking and
Yeah.
But then a lot of the timber rattlesnakes where we grew up were coal black, the whole snake.
Yeah, that's true. They were really dark.
That up there on Unaka Mountain, that snake that Dad stepped on or almost stepped on, I grabbed him and he was like, "What are you doing?" And there was a 5.5 foot black timber rattlesnake right below his feet when we were up there huckleberry picking.
I wonder if that could have something to do with heat conservation, because the black snake could lay on a rock up there in that mountain and get more heat.
There are a lot of those dens up in that country that, there'll be a high percentage of black ones, but there'll also be the, big yellow and green black ones that the kind of normal.
Yeah, good point.
But like this snake right here, you'll see these mixed in with those black ones. I think it's just like a black lab, yellow lab, chocolate lab thing. I think, they come out of the same brood of snakes. There'll be some that are black and some that aren't.
Well, you can really see the body, like I was trying to describe earlier on both of these because of the angle of the photograph. But you can look towards its head, how narrow and small the body is, and then it gets big and flat and triangular shaped, back down to a little bitty tail, and you can see that on both of those snakes.
And you can,
that's
your boy with the snake.
That's whose first name now I can't remember. Wiley Hubbard.
Ray
Wiley Hubbard there. I'm probably fine. Oh, no, there's a big old indigo snake. I don't know. This was going to be the end of my slides because I really liked that picture. And this was, again, part of that Florida effort where they were going out and counting indigo snakes, and that's a big one. And
that one's big enough. If it tightened down on you, you'd feel it.
Oh yeah, you would. That's a big old indigo snake. But it's pretty obvious she's not afraid of it, or if she is, she's doing a good job of disguising it. And it's not really paying much attention to her because, like I say, they're pretty mild mannered. And there's a king snake. Here's one of the pictures I was going to show you. There's a king snake of some variety, with one of the varieties, and it is eating a rattlesnake.
It is indeed,
or has almost eaten it. Now
that looks like a Mojave. It's got a coon tail.
Yeah, but it's not black.
But the white is way wider than the black, and that's typical for a Mojave, which is a rattlesnake in America that, unlike most rattlesnakes or some rattlesnakes, its venom is mostly neurotoxic.
Yeah, I read that.
And that's the bad thing about eastern diamondbacks too. They got a lot of neurotoxins. But so rattlesnake or pit viper venom comes kind of in two forms, either neurotoxic, much less common, which attacks your nervous system and causes you not to be able to breathe, or hemotoxics, which are tissue destroying blood. They act primarily on the blood system.
Right. Okay, I'm going to run through these. There's a
We know too much about silly snakes. That's ridiculous.
this is some kind of
Just think what we could have been.
yeah. There goes the train. There's a western blind snake. I've actually seen a couple of these thanks to Mr. Zorns. He showed me a few of these kind of snakes out in New Mexico.
That one was a worm snake, and you with me when we found the horned owl? There was a horned owl that got hit on the highway
Might have been because I remember that
west of Las Cruces, over towards Silver City, and we picked up the owl to take to the university, and it had a worm snake in its mouth, which was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. For guys like us.
For guys like us, yep.
Another king snake. I think that's a California. I think. And that's another rat snake, or a king snake. I mean, sorry.
I think that's a black king snake from like up by where Mom and Dad live.
It probably is.
That's pretty cool. There's a Sonora Mountain King, Pyramelena.
And this is the not friendly guy. Another little rattlesnake, which I don't remember which one that is. That might be another.
That's a Massasauga.
Okay, Massasauga. Which this is too, and this was, you can see this one's a lot darker.
That's the eastern. This is the one that's endangered, the eastern version, and the previous one was a desert Massasauga.
And there's a garter snake, and a coach whip of some sort, or a
striped whip snake.
Whip snake, yeah.
The little diamondback.
And these are all different kind of colors of rat snakes. I've had a couple of those in my life. Which that's one too. No, that's a water snake. That's another water snake that would die for people who think that's a copperhead.
Yep, that's a northern water snake, which they would have in Michigan and Ohio, and there's another one.
Yep.
See how its body is submerged and its head is above water.
Usually what you see when one of these is going across the water, the creek, the lake, the pond, whatever, you'll see its head up, and then you'll just see that the body's beneath the water, doing its serpentine motion, and you can kind of see the wave action from it as it go along and the weight from its head. But that's if you're paying attention and ain't running the other direction or something.
Oh, there's my mother's face. So my mother, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, came running into the house one day screaming. And she'd been out picking berries. She was picking blackberries at the edge of the yard, and we had a bunch of like honeysuckle vines and whatnot growing around the yard, and blackberry bushes, and she comes screaming into the house that there was a snake, and I immediately ran to the snake, and it was a smooth green snake like this one.
Yeah, I've only caught a couple of those,
which is pretty cool.
Were you with me the day we had one of them? We were outside. It could have been Philip, but we had a trailer or something hooked on the back of my truck, and we just looked out there in the driveway, and there was a green snake, and I don't remember now which one. It was had crawled up the asphalt and had lifted itself up, yay much or so, and was like it was going to crawl on that trailer, check it out or something. And I just looked out there and I saw it, and I thought, well, what the heck?
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Must have been Philip was with me then. It was the strangest thing. That's supposed to be another Massasauga, I think, or pygmy, I mean.
Yeah, that's the little red one that lives in on the coast over in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia.
And I'm assuming that's the tail, but I can't see the rattles. No, well, I think that's the tail. There's the other one, or another variation of one of them. But again, you can see that flat body, very characteristic of rattlesnakes and copperheads.
So back up 1, 2,
Back
maybe
up.
back up. Go
That
one more.
That one?
Oh, that okay. So that next one is the version of pygmy rattlesnakes that we had in Arkansas, the western.
And I think, well, I'm not sure about that.
You remember
We have one here, but I've never seen one.
We had
They're very rare.
we had a female that we kept at the house in an aquarium.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
she gave birth to 4 or 5 pups which was kind of cool, but we couldn't get them to eat. We ended up releasing them because we couldn't get them to eat anything.
What do they mainly prey on? Bugs, small rodents?
You know, the adults eat like little frogs and little mammals, but we couldn't get the juveniles were literally about the size of a number 2 yellow pencil.
Yeah.
But not that long. I mean, they were about, after you'd used the pencil for a month.
We had a little garter snake. The girls did one time for a while. I don't know if you saw that one or not. What did they call it? Brenda, are you still in here? What did they call that snake? They had a name for it. And it would eat night crawlers.
Oh, cool.
And worms. And you could, it was kind of like your yellow pencil. You could give it a big old fat crawler and it would just eat that thing up and it would look like it had swallowed. It looked like it. You remember the big fat pencils you wrote with in first grade?
Yeah.
It would look like a little pencil had swallowed one of those big pencils, and it would just have a big long bulge inside it. It was pretty kind of neat. Hey, Shelly, welcome in. Hadn't seen you in a while. This episode's Mark and Tim's Ode to Snakes. Well, sorry, Ian. We do get carried away, I guess.
They're pretty cool critters.
They are.
We had lots of snakes when I was in school in Arkansas. Lots in the house, and cottonmouths and copperheads and rattlesnakes, and I had a yellow-bellied water snake, which was the coolest snake I've ever had. You could take like a shiner minnow. They eat a lot of fish, and you could take a shiner minnow and hold it like by the tail, and that snake would literally just climb up and take it right out of your hand like he was a dog or something.
What kind was it again? I was reading something.
Yep, yellow-bellied water snake.
Oh, yellow-bellied water. Here's a prairie rattler. I'm trying to get through these now so we can just get finished. There's a pygmy. And I believe that's might be a Florida rat or a Texas rat. I'm not sure. But again, there's many varieties of rat snakes out there. I wonder
if that's a mangrove snake. That's cool looking.
That could be.
It looks like a Florida species, whatever it is.
I think it was. I believe it is. I've caught a yellow rat snake or green rat snake. I guess they're called yellow in Florida once. It wasn't quite like this, but it was similar. And there's yet another variety of copper or rattlesnake. And here is a rough green snake, I think.
Yeah.
Sure.
Keeled.
Yep.
Yeah,
the scales. See how they stand out more if you could really see them. There's a good example. They've got a crease down the middle of them, more or less.
Yep, they're beauties. That rattlesnake you flashed over was a Willardi ridge nose rattlesnake. One of the rarest rattlesnakes.
Yeah, that's and you had one in you had something in New Mexico.
Well, we were looking for these, the Animus ridge-nosed rattlesnake.
Animus, yes, that's what. So it was one of these, or
Yeah,
variation.
and we were never successful. Other researchers were. We never found them, but
But they were just in that one area, right?
they're just on one little Sky Island mountain range, which is pretty cool. But
Except when it comes to surviving, that makes it a little tougher.
yeah,
And that guy's got a mouth ready and happening. Now this is some kind of a western king snake, I believe.
speckled king.
Yeah,
That was the one that was really common in New Mexico.
I think might be the one that snuck got in my bow case and went home with me one time from out there. I don't know how that thing got in my bow case, but boy, there it was when I opened it up. Oh, this is a yellow rat from Florida. I do know that one. And if you look, you can see it's got some dark stripes so probably started out younger. Those black stripes are probably more prominent. Camouflage. And there's a garter snake of some variety. And I believe that's a ribbon snake. Or what'd you call it?
I said, and another one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or a garter. Yeah. And there's my king snake and my bear. So this ought to be the end of there's another rattlesnake. That's a western. No.
That's a canebrake.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. And that's another version. Yeah. I would call that a canebrake.
Oh, that's a twin spot.
Yeah, it is. That's right. I'd never seen a twin spot.
I've never seen one in person either, except in captivity. I looked for them, but I never found one.
And there's a good picture of a western diamondback, or what some people call a coontail, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. That's a big, mean one.
Yeah. And that's the only thing. Well, we saw another one earlier that had a slightly different coloration on its tail, but I don't know. This thing stands out. Look at the buttons on that rascal. That'd be a loud rattle.
And some people say that you can tell the age of that snake by the number of buttons on its tail, but that's not correct. They get a new one every time they shed, and that one's got an entire rattle still with the little button at the end.
Yeah,
because a lot of times they're broken off and they're just big and stubby looking, but every time they shed their skin, which can be up to 3 or 4 times a year,
if they're eating a lot,
they get another button. So, yeah, anyway.
Shelly, have you ever tried to go out and photograph snakes? A big mean one sounds like you should stay away from those. Yeah, and Shelly's talking about her snake. I think she said something about it eating pinkies. Oh, she had a 3-foot ball python and didn't want to eat. Vet gave her vitamin shots. She eventually started eating pinkies. And pinkies, and then I gave her to the roommate when I moved. Pinkies are another word for little baby mice, just so you know.
Naked little baby mice.
Naked little baby mice. Okay, let's see. I know I'm bound to be. There's another Atrox.
In the big mean phase.
In the big mean phase, yeah. I'm not. That's another rat snake or a corn snake or milk snake or some variety of that. Maybe like a Midwestern or Plains or something. Maybe.
Yeah.
There's another one of those guys. I must have found a lot of pictures. That's the last one. I'm sure everybody.
I think that's that California red rattlesnake, which is
could be. I did have a picture of one of those.
Kind of closely related to Atrox.
which is a fancy scientific word for
a diamondback.
Yeah, for a diamondback.
But it's easier to
throw
say.
these words- We like to throw these words out there once in a while, like we know something.
To make us look like we're cool and we're really
Yeah.
just nerds that like snakes.
Real professionals. They are, Shelley, but boy, I tell you what, you got to convince some people that they're not interested in hearing anything good about a snake. They really aren't. I grew up with around the father of a classmate who was in Boy Scouts with me, and his dad was an adult support person. He took us camping and helped. There was two scouts in our group that fathers had pickup trucks, and I'll never forget because you always had to count how many people could get in one, because one of them was a 3 on the tree shift on the column, and you could put one extra guy in there because the other guy had a shifter in the floor, and you couldn't put as many people in there because it was hard to shift. Anyway, Mr. Raymond Odell, and I think he was the most terrified person I've ever met of snakes, and he would not get around one. He didn't want to see one. He didn't want to. And I'll never forget, a kid walked into a campsite one day and he'd found a dead snake. I don't think he killed it. I think he found it. And it was just a little water snake or a garter snake. I don't remember now. And he just walked into camp with it, and Mr. Odell saw it long before any of the rest of us did. And the next thing I know, he has this big old shovel in his hand he got somewhere out of his truck or something. And he told that boy, he said, "You get rid of that." And I'm talking, he was 20 feet apart at least. He said, "You get rid of that snake right now. Don't bring it no closer to me." And he also told me a story about going into a country church one time and figured out that it was might have been a snake handling church, and he just turned to his buddy and said, "Reckon where they'd like to have another door, because if they bring out the snakes, I'm leaving." He was really terrified. I mean, he didn't want.
We had a game warden that was that way.
Really?
And if you had it, he wasn't even playing. If you brought a snake out, it was, and I would always have them in my office. We would get people that would catch. We got a little bitty rattlesnake out here called a midget faded, and it's illegal to possess them. And we would get people in town that would occasionally have one.
Okay.
And we would confiscate them, and they would end up in my office. And I would
correct how that happened.
I would keep them over the winter and take care of them over the winter, and then release them in the summertime. And if this particular game warden knew that, he wouldn't go in even close to my door. He had a hard time walking down the hallway past my office.
That's bad.
And
I've known people that way.
Yeah, and when I first met him, he said, I was talking to somebody about, I don't know why people kill snakes unless they're going to eat one. I don't have any idea why people do that. And he said, I don't either. And I'm like, I thought kindred spirit. And he said they've not invented a shovel handle near long enough for you to kill a snake. So, yeah.
I have another story while I'm thinking before I start winding down.
And some people jump out of airplanes and don't think that's scary. So I guess to each his own.
I've heard it. So I don't know how many people garden or have garden, but we have, and I don't know if these are common or uncommon. They're probably everywhere. But the common hoe, it just comes out, has a little neck, and then the flat hoe surface, and you cut weeds and, chop up the ground around plants and whatnot with it. And I've heard it said that they think that thing was really invented for housewives to kill snakes with. And my mother was pretty afraid of snakes, and she was always afraid of me handling snakes. And as my kids were growing up, she used to say, "Oh, don't teach those girls about snakes. They'll pick up a rattlesnake or a copperhead and it'll bite them." And I said, "No, they won't, because I'm teaching them not to do that." And it wasn't too uncommon for my girls to grab a snake, find a snake, catch it, and bring it in to show me or something. So they learned pretty well. But anyway, Mom didn't like that. So one day I was at school, and my brother was probably not old enough to be in school. And Mom looked out the window, and we had a separate garage from the house. And around the edge of the garage, from the inside of the garage, around the wall and down the outside wall, was a great big rat snake. Biggest one I remember seeing as a kid. And Mom didn't want that snake anywhere near, I guess, us kids, or I don't know what possessed her, but she went running out of the house and flagged down a guy that was driving along the country road, mowing the sides, with a sickle bar along the roadway, right of way. And she flagged him down and got him to get off that tractor and come up there and kill that snake for her, because she didn't want it. She didn't want it there. And she said, "I'll get you a hoe." And I guess she fetched him a hoe from the garden or something. And he broke one hoe completely off at the neck, trying to kill that snake. But he did kill it. And I'll never forget, because I came home from school and I said, "Why'd you kill it? Why'd you kill that for?" And I was probably not in the second, third grade, something like that. And she of course proceeded to tell me all the unreasonable reasons why she had it killed. But I'll never forget that, because that was a big one. I mean, he made that curve around the garage, and that was all she wanted to see right there. And he was still there when I got home, so I got to see it. It was a big one. But I can remember catching those things when I was a kid, catching snakes that were longer than I was tall, black snakes. You don't see many big ones anymore. The biggest one I saw when I was working at TVA was probably 4.5 feet, maybe. And he wasn't, or maybe 5, but he wasn't that big around. But I've seen them 6 and 7 feet long. I swear I have. They used to get big. I think, again, they get run over a lot on the roads, and they just don't get. You used to herp at night because the snakes would be crossing roads. They were easy to find.
Right.
You could see them and get out and pick them up. But back here, there's so much road traffic that if they cross the roads at night, they're going to get run over. And around here, somebody will back up and make sure they get it if they're not careful, because they don't, they're snake killers. Everybody back here wants to kill a snake. It's ingrained.
You remember that when I was working in Kentucky, that exchange student we had from Malaysia that was my roommate?
Yeah.
And he and I were driving down the road one day, and the great big black rat snake was crossing the road, and I jumped out and grabbed it. And he was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I took it and moved it off the road and put it over in the woods, and we went on. And he said, "I would never do that in my home country." And I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because all of the black snakes where I grew up are cobras."
Yeah.
And he thought it was a cobra.
Oh, he thought it was a cobra.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't know we had black snakes that weren't cobras.
That's funny.
He wasn't a wildlife. He was a recreation guide or something. He wasn't a wildlife guide.
Oh my goodness. I've had another story about that now. I forgot what it was. It was the same kind of thing. Oh no, it was a different. I was working, on airplanes in Nashville in the late 80s. And even then I had a reputation for being Jungle Larry or something. A friend of mine nicknamed me Jungle Larry. And because I was always out doing that kind of stuff, or running around with you back then, or coming up to see you. Anyway, one day I was out back. We had a garage door that would open up in the back of one of our hangars to try to let a breeze go through, and you could sit down on the edge of it, and we'd eat lunch there sometimes. And I had this little corn snake or something. Somebody else had brought it in actually to show me in a box. I had it in a box, and I got it out, and I was messing around with it, just handling it, looking at it and checking markings. And one of our bosses came out the back door. He was going to step through there and come out and smoke outside the hangar, because of course you couldn't do that inside. And he laid his hand on my shoulder and had his leg halfway up over the thing in the air, and he saw that snake in my hand. And the next thing we knew, he was gone to the other side of the hangar, and he said, "What in the hell is wrong with you?" He was out of there. I didn't even think about somebody doing that. He wasn't going to get close to me at all.
Oh,
I got called one day. They had me come. The line guys that drove the tugs, moved the airplanes and fuel. They came and got me one day, and they said, "There's a snake in that GPU unit," which was, big portable electrical thing that they plug into the airplanes on the ramp to help them start or keep running on the tarmac or whatever. And sure enough, there was a big old rat snake up in that thing, or a big old corn snake. We had some mix over there around Nashville. There was a few things there that we didn't have up here.
right.
But he was a pretty good sized snake. He was 3 to 4 feet, and they wanted me to get that snake out of that GPU. We had to open it up and get in there and catch him and get him out. He was going to get killed. He would have got killed if he stayed there long. But so, those kind of things, you get a reputation for handling snakes, and, people tend to come and get you and seek you out at certain times. Like I said, I was walking Boundary, and I always carried a snake with me or a stake. I had a walking cane that I could take the lower section off, and I had a screwed in hook that I made myself that I could for snakes. And I took that with me everywhere I went when I worked out in the field up there. If I was going to be doing something, I'd use the walking stick when I needed to, and I'd use the snake hook when I wanted to, if you will. And so I had got the people that mowed the grass and took care of the properties up there around the dam and stuff. They nicknamed me Snake Man, because they always had that, and they always gave me a hard time for carrying that around. But they had other ways to deal with snakes, and they didn't have any need for a snake stick. Somebody hit the window.
Somebody just nailed the window. I mean,
I actually think I saw him flutter off to my right, your left.
he went down hard. That was a hard one.
All right, brother.
He might be lying out there. Okay.
I'm gonna shut this down. I've got to get too sore to sit here. So, Shelly, thanks for coming in. And nobody's ever that late.
Good to see everybody.
Well, you and I'll talk later or tomorrow or something.
Glad we got to tell snake tales.
Yeah, we don't get to talk snakes every day. And you guys are thinking, and you don't have to again either. Well, maybe you learned something. I don't know. Maybe you weren't.
Yeah. Maybe they have a new appreciation for snakes.
Yeah, I bet that's the case. What about that, Ian? What do you think? You've always got an opinion.
Well, he said thanks, and thank you, Ian.
Well, yeah, thank you, Ian, for sticking around. And everybody have a great weekend. There's supposed to be a big air show here in town this weekend. We had Blue Angels flying over the house yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Because yesterday was a beautiful day and they were practicing. Today is rainy and overcast. Although it's not raining right now, maybe they'll get to go up after a while. I think the actual air show don't start till maybe 1 o'clock. So maybe by then they'll get to go out.
I think the Blue Angels can fly in the rain.
Yeah, but they have to be low and they can't do all their maneuvers.
Yeah.
I've seen them do it, and and it's still amazing what they can do. But
They are in the Navy after all.
some of them are Marine pilots. Okay.
Well, Department of the Navy, men's department.
There's Tina. Tina showed up.
Always
actually said
watch. She's
Yeah.
always watching.
She said that she might not be active today. She was busy or she didn't feel well. I'm not sure which, but glad you made it in, Tina. I figured you were here somewhere. All right, guys. Ian said something else. I wanted to see what he said. Oh, Shelly said
He still runs when he sees them, but agrees they're pretty.
Well, maybe you won't run from as many now. How about that, Ian? No chance of that. I figured you'd been here, Tina. I thought so. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of this day. Wherever you're at, I hope the sun shines before it's over with. And see you all again next week. If the creek
Later
don't
on.
Later on, brother. Where's that off button? There it is.
How do I leave?